opportunity to be here. You were very kind.
We've barely started and I've already lost control of it. All right. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Rob Klein. I am the host of Oral Histories Live, which, as many of you know, is generously sponsored by our friends Mike and Esther Willson. If you join me in thanking them. Luman said he didn't know he had sponsors. But of course, he has sponsors, so that's good. I also want to point out, before we go too much further, that he is easily the most prepared Oral Histories Live guest ever. So I'm just going to sit here largely and let him tell you his story. But before we jump in, let me do just a little bit of introduction, though he's a man who hardly needs an introduction. This community has been blessed for as long as I can remember with some of the most amazing instrumental music instructors anywhere to be found. Even David Law. That's who we could find on short notice. There are very few, I can say with confidence, very few who are as legendary for their long service in this community than our guest tonight, Luman Colton, who led, you know, I'm a Washington grad. He led a band that I admired without having to like it for a long time over at Jefferson High School. So if you join me in welcoming Luman Colton, Bill. All right, you want to start at the beginning?
Well, I think my first line is to say, in the past around here, I have been best known as Steve Colton's dad. Steve Colton, who had his last teaching years at Luman and watched that school system grow and excel. I felt he went way beyond what his old man had accomplished.
That's another band I admire without liking.
And at age 59, had one massive heart attack, which he did not see coming. He didn't recognize symptoms, but they were on vacation out at Yellowstone Park with their trailer. Such a shock to all of us. But I was certainly proud of Steve that he chose his profession and did so well. I looked at the things he accomplished and tried to, in some way, come up to some of them. And his wife is here tonight, Sharon. And Sharon, after a long time of just teaching piano and having cats for company, he got another husband here just a year ago, and so we're happy about that.
All right.
You gotta be careful, old man, they get to talking.
You know what? I need that. I am prepared. So, when we were talking on the phone, you told me that you remember the moment that you fell in love with music.
Yes. There was a time when the New York Philharmonic Orchestra broadcast on radio on Saturday nights. And at that time, I was a junior in high school. I had heard about that. I tuned in to the program, and the first program I heard was an all-Wagner program, which, as an old trombone player, you know, I heard things like the Overture to Tannhauser and the Ride of Valkyries, and all those exciting pieces. And there I sat in the room with this radio in 1937, and that to me was a musical conversion. I decided at that moment, I want to be in music the rest of my life. This is what I enjoy most in school, and I want to do this. So I always felt that that was a musical conversion for me, and I went on playing the trombone. If you would have heard the way I played then, why, you would have wondered if that boy was going to amount to anything. But I did go on with it. I went to Cornell College. In fact, the Cornell Orchestra made tours in those days, and we got them to play one of their concerts in our local gym. We sponsored them. And there again, it reinforced my desire. And so I went out for their auditions, and I didn't win first place, but I got a $100 scholarship for my freshman year. And that sure helped out with total expense at that time at Cornell, board, room, tuition, music lessons, the whole package was $650. So that $100 gave me a good start. In the summertime, I worked on farms, some of them for $2 a day. You get $6 for the week and your meals. So that's how I got my start.
Now, you grew up, you were listening to that radio in that other state over in Illinois.
Yes.
Right? So what was it about? Was it that the fact that the band came to visit your school? Is that how you got hooked up with Cornell?
Why did I go to Cornell? Because we were Methodists, and our Methodist minister in the little town of Kirkland was semi-retired from Cornell and currently had a son attending Cornell. And when that son was home and visited, he gave me a sales talk on Cornell. He said, well, if you want to go to a music school. And in those days, Cornell was a liberal arts college. It had connections with the Methodist Church. And the Conservatory of Music was attached to the General Liberal Arts College. See, so you could get a music major, you were still going to liberal arts courses, but the music building was separate and had its own faculty. And it was good for me, small town boy, to go to a school which at that time, I used this figure of 650 once before. I think that was their attendance right then, of students. And
so as you're studying music there at Cornell, and there's an event going on in the world that needs your attention. You're going to get drafted out of school.
In my junior year, I was listening to the New York Philharmonic Orchestra broadcast on the radio in my room. And they interrupted that broadcast with the famous quote from President Roosevelt, this day shall live in infamy, telling about the invasion of the Germans coming with their fleet of ships and hitting Pearl Harbor and so forth. And I listened to that and I thought, I wonder if that will affect me someday. And of course, it did. Soon after that, they gave college students a chance to enlist in the ERC, Enlisted Reserve Corps, which was designed to help them finish their college if the need was not too great for their enlistment. So I signed up with a bunch of others in the ERC, and in March of my senior year, I received my call, excuse me, my call to report to Camp Dodge, and it didn't say wait till the school year was over. It said you get down there on March 25th, and so I had to bypass my senior recital, my final exams, at the end of the course and so forth. But the college very kindly, the next year at midterm graduation in January, granted me my degree on the basis of military courses that I had taken in the meantime. So I didn't have to go back and make up that whole semester. And I was very grateful for that.
I'll bet if you called them up, they'd let you play your senior recital.
Cutting my recital was a blessing for me. It was going to be a vocal recital. I had taken trombone and voice, and those that sung in choir with me, like Bill Moss, I know, it's no prize.
Well, tell us a little bit about your service during the war. What all did that involve for you?
Yeah, so they called in this enlisted reserve corps group. There were probably a dozen of us from Cornell that went in at the same time. And we checked in at Camp Dodge down by Des Moines, and then were dispersed to various camps around the country, depending on our interests and background. And I was sent to
Don't look at me, I don't know. Paper, I'll look it up.
Well, it says
Kentucky.
yes, you did basic training at Fort Knox.
Help me somebody.
At Fort Knox, yes.
Fort Knox,
Yeah.
Kentucky. I knew this was him. At my age, and I'm not confessing, I'm pleased to announce that in January I turned 98. I'm grateful for that. My wife is here because one of the things I am losing is my memory for names, dates, and so forth. And there was an example. Thank you, Sharon.
I thought Sharon
And
was
Sharon
there.
is not 98. Not even close.
I assumed Sharon was there to make sure I was properly respectful. But perhaps not. Maybe it is to help you remember.
But Sharon was a nurse, and she enjoyed taking care of the elderly. So that's how
This was not a direction I intended to see. So why don't we return to the thrilling days of World War II? And in your service, you're at Fort Knox. You get shipped, looks like, to Arkansas, and then to New York, and then you go overseas. What were you up to overseas?
Yes. I went overseas in the last major convoy of World War II. By convoy, I mean line of ships miles long. As far as you could see in any direction, there were ships, and they had some protection. They had battleships. They had planes when they were near shore to try and protect them from German planes. But by that time, the German planes were defending their own country, and the submarines were reduced in number. So here was this line, and I was on a ship that they had requisitioned from the British, and the main menu that they served us, we called Billy Goat Stew. It was not a great treat, but, and on that ship I made the mistake of taking my first saltwater shower. First and last. I itched the rest of the time. But yeah, after over a week on the seas, then that convoy broke up, dispersed. The ship I was on docked at Glasgow, Scotland. Then we got on a train and went south to Southampton, England. So they were dispersing the people to various training centers.
And then towards the end of your time there, the Army helped you further your music education. Is that what I understand? They sent you off to Trinity College?
Yes. This was after VE Day. The war was over. And as a kind of a goodwill gesture to the countries that we had occupied, why they set up various study groups in different countries, and you could apply for them, and if you were accepted, why, you went free. So I applied for one at Trinity College of Music right in London, where I was stationed. And so for my last 3 months, I didn't report to the Army. I had my rank of staff sergeant by then, so I was getting good pay and sending that home rapidly to pay off my college debt. Did I tell you that I had to borrow $1,500 to get through 4 years at Cornell? $1,500. I paid it off, and I had $200 left to get married. And so I was in London at that time, living in the same place. I had a room in what is now the embassy, U.S. Embassy in London, if you would go there, on Grosvenor Square. Sharon and I went back on a trip some years ago, and where's this building that I stayed in? But there was a new building that had replaced it, and it's now the American Embassy, and I had a room upstairs. There was a GI mess hall down the street a little ways where I got my meals, and but I had no Army duties. That was what that GI Bill did for a few selected soldiers as kind of a goodwill gesture. And I attended Trinity College of Music. I took trombone lessons from the first trombonist of the London Philharmonic once a week, and voice lessons from a gentleman who directed the Bach Choir in London. And all that for free for 3 months, and then down to Southampton, and got on a Victory ship to go home.
Now, you may remember he told us that he wasn't a very good singer. It says here that you sang for a season with the Royal Choral Society. And as far as I know, that did not end our diplomatic relationship. So you couldn't have been that bad.
I should have asked this long ago. Can you people in back hear me, understand?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the blessing of having been a band director. If you didn't get your message to the drummers, you were in trouble.
All right, so you come home on a Victory ship, and it looks like you go to, a fine Big Ten school, not the right Big Ten school, but you go to Northwestern and get your master's in music and study trombone there. Anything notable about your time at Northwestern?
Yes, my home was in central northern Illinois, little town of Kirkland. So I lived with my parents. I got out of the Army in April, and I worked in a local hemp mill for a couple months there to build up some money and get some money so I could get married to my girlfriend of some 7 years, on and off, and we got together again. And then, let's see. Now I've lost my train of thought.
Well, that's because you were thinking about your wife.
Oh, that's right. Well, what next?
All right, moving on. So you graduate from Northwestern and you start your career as a band director? Is that what comes next?
Yeah, that was a busy spring. I got out of the Army at the end of April. I worked at the hemp mill for a couple of months. Going with Arlene, the girl from Rockford, and we got married early in June, and we both started summer school at Northwestern. Arlene had been in the Waves for 2 years. That was the women's branch of the Navy. After the war, why they just called the women Navy, but they were Waves during World War II, and so we both went to summer school at Northwestern, and had our bills paid for, both of us, and then the second summer. She didn't go to summer school. She stayed with her parents because she was about to have Steve. And that's the way it happened. So he was a Northwestern baby, and many of you knew Steve. And so we went to the town of Postville, and I taught there 4 years. And in those the other 3 summers, I went back to Northwestern alone as summer school, finished up on my master's degree, and then following that, I applied for a little larger school, Denison in western Iowa. It was a county seat town in 2000, and got that job, and so we went to Denison for the next 7 years. And my 7th year at Denison, Cedar Rapids had just built 2 new high schools, Jefferson and Washington. And I applied there, and I got a job in Cedar Rapids, not at one of the high schools, but they had moved a lot of their junior high people into the high school jobs. And so there was a band director job at Roosevelt, which was becoming a junior high. And I taught there for 6 years. And then when the older man in Jefferson decided to get away from that, the active life, why, I got the job at Jefferson. Was there for 14 years.
He says casually. I was there for 14 years. Tell us about the Band of Blues. Tell us about your experience at I remember vividly, it would have been after you had left the program, but you built the program so well that even those of us in other bands in the 80s knew that the Band of Blue was the band to look up to. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
It pained us. It was difficult for us.
Those were good years, and my 3 children all graduated from Jefferson. And,
Do you have favorite performances, halftime performances, favorite concert pieces, things you remember from your time at Jeff?
Yeah. I guess I was still feeling my military background because my halftime shows often had a military theme, and, or a patriotic theme at least. I wasn't a warmonger, a militant, but I was patriotic, and so we did patriotic themes with people like Lana Turner. Yeah, that's good to see some of these former students here. And then when as the high school band life got more active and was a problem to me, my wife, Arlene, had an extended illness. She was a patient of bronchiectasis, which you don't often hear of these days. It's a lung disease, and no, she never smoked. That's always the first question that's asked. But she had lung surgery twice, and that was slowing me down. I needed to spend more time with her, so I applied for Wilson Junior High when it was open, and I spent my last few years there because it didn't demand the nights and weekends. And so that's how I finished up in Cedar Rapids.
And so I'm interested in both sides of time. So you're in a junior high,
Yeah.
you spend 14 years with the Band of Blue, and then you go back to a junior high. And I'm interested in your thoughts about the differences when teaching younger musicians versus high school musicians, and frankly, how you could stand to go back to junior high.
Well, the plus for junior high is enthusiasm. If you can channel that, you're okay. If you can't put up with that one, you better stay away from them. Of course, I think they're different now than they were then too. We're talking, what, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, I was teaching junior high before TV was a dominant factor in the home. And that changed things a lot. Why practice that instrument when you can watch TV? Especially if mother is working. Yeah, and so I was there at a good time.
Did you find it hard to retire?
Pardon?
Was it challenging to retire? Was it difficult for you to leave the profession?
No, I was 64 and a half, and I thought, I'm ready.
Junior high kids will do that to you, in my experience. But you don't just stop, right? It says here that you would have been coordinating the AllCity Instrumental Music Contest while I was playing in it with varying levels of skill in the late 80s and through the 90s. So tell me about the AllCity Music Contest, which, raising my own kids in this game, it doesn't seem to attract the same number of musicians that I remember participating in it back in the day. That may just be me misremembering, but it was a big deal in our musical calendar, and I have to think that's partially due to your coordination of it.
Yes, the AllCity Music Contest, I think, was somewhat unique to Cedar Rapids, and involved a lot of kids. They depended on the director. Some directors required every student in their band to play a solo, but I kind of took a middle of the road. I'd like to have every one of you kids play in the contest, either a solo or play in an ensemble, like a quartet or a trio. And they usually would accept that. And so we had a lot of participation. And we had some outstanding soloists like Lana Baldus.
And so you're running that contest. What does that involve in terms of organization? Like, how many people did it take to put on the City Music Contest?
Well, we ran as many as 20 contest centers because we included piano solos, and at its peak, there were probably around 10 piano centers. Now, by a center, I mean a room where a contest was going on. And they were by grades. You'd have a primary center, and an intermediate, and or junior high, and a high school. And they were judged accordingly. But as far as the instrumental, why, their ballad, their entry blank, gave their history and background so the judge could look at that and see how old this kid is, how long he's played, and whether he takes private lessons. That was factored into it also. If he just took group lessons, why, they were a little easier on him, and if he had private lessons, they expected a little more.
That's why they were hard.
Private lessons.
I understand now. I've been waiting this whole presentation to make fun of Luman's trombone playing, but I'm a saxophone player, and we are very seldom allowed to make fun of any other instruments. But I remember those contests so vividly, and how exciting and nerve-wracking it was to play for the judges and to have put in that work. Mom would make me practice, and just what an important time in my development as a musician. So thank you for your hard work in that area.
And lessons, when I started giving private lessons in the late 60s, had just been raised to $2 for a half-hour lesson. It had been $1.50. So they stayed at that $2 level for quite a while. So the teacher was making $4 an hour, which bought a lot of groceries.
All right, so it's the mid-'80s. You've retired from teaching. You're helping with the AllCity, you're coordinating the AllCity Music Contest. But what else are you up to in the early years of your retirement?
Well, I got into piano tuning for a while. I had a brother-in-law who lived in Delaware because he married my sister, who, after college, married a DuPont engineer and was living in Delaware. And so when they visited and over the telephone, he kind of got me interested. He said, that'd be a good part-time activity for you. And so then I took a 3-week course at Shell Lake, Wisconsin. There was a music camp there, and the lady taught us. And so I was a 3-week wonder. In the Army, we used to talk about the young lieutenants being a 90-day wonder. In this case, a piano tuner was a 3-week wonder. And, I practiced first on the family, and then did
The family's piano. I just want to be clear about that. You practice on the piano.
Family's piano. But yeah, it was a good part-time income, and I enjoyed it. I met people that way. Once I got these things, why, life changed. Now, I don't say don't hire a piano tuner that has hearing aids. Because they have really improved them technically an awful lot. But the ones I had at that time, they just amplified everything. What you were listening for, if two notes were out of tune, you'd hear beats, kind of wah, 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 wah. When the walls went, it disappeared, the two notes were in tune. And with hearing aids, you were getting the walls all the time. So that was enough fun.
That's our public service for tonight. Not hire a piano tuner with old school hearing aids. I want to jump back to the early 1970s, a pivotal time in my own life, because I was born then. You were the president of the Iowa Bandmasters Association from 72 to 73, and I know there's a Meredith Willson story in here.
Yeah, that's when I was president of the Iowa Bandmasters, that was an elective office. One Sunday afternoon, I was out in my driveway washing my car. My wife called me to the phone, and so I answered the phone, hello, and the man on the other end said, hi, this is Meredith Willson. And I just about said, yeah, and this is Charlie McCarthy. But for once in my life, I was smart. And it was Meredith Willson. He said, Renee and I just got back from abroad, and through the stack of mail, I got your invitation to come and be honored guest at Iowa Bandmasters Convention. And we had the nicest visit. He was just a friendly Midwestern guy. You know, he'd grown up in the Midwest. So that was my visit with Meredith Willson. He never did come to the convention. Too busy. And he didn't need the money. He's doing well.
He's still right. Well, and to this very day, his estate controls the usage of, say, the Iowa fight song and what you can and cannot excerpt from it. And so the Meredith Willson estate is doing just fine. All along.
And if you go to Mason City, they have this museum in his honor. I presume it's still open.
Yes.
With artifacts of Meredith Willson. He's just a good Iowa boy that did things well.
Rob?
Yes, sir.
Before you leave that point, Luman and Steve were the first father-son IDA presidents in the history of the organization.
Wow. You're like the Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. That seemed better
better
as I was
say that
formulating
again
it.
so they all heard it.
So, not the joke part. So let me make sure I have this right. The first father and son to both serve as president of the Iowa Bandmasters. Is that right? That's pretty darn amazing.
Yeah. So that's why after that term of office for Steve, I would introduce myself as Steve Colton's dad. And I could tell that now, and he would just laugh with the rest of you. But Steve was a kid I had to practically whip him to get him to practice. You know,
The poor man is not here to
he'd be
defend
in
himself.
his bedroom. He'd shut the door to his bedroom so his two sisters couldn't pester him, you know. And then it'd get quiet in there. So I go in and take a look. He was reading Mad Magazine. You remember that magazine? Mad Magazine. And I say, okay, Steve, I'll take that.
He had literary aspirations. It's important to American literature. All right, I've been leading you down this primrose path through your life, but what highlights have I missed? What else would you like to tell the assembled masses before we take questions from them?
You have time to hear all the things I did wrong?
I feel like that question is a trap. I'm going to say no.
Well,
Maybe just one.
Yeah, we would, yes, if you have one thing you did wrong,
I got one.
Uh-oh.
So, we were chatting, Luman and I at the gym the other day. Sharon had wandered off somewhere. We were talking at old times, and he played with the Eastern Iowa Brass Band for a few years. And then he said, but I had to go because I just couldn't handle 2 jobs. I was marrying Sharon.
She can reach him.
I was going to see if she did it. So I just thought I don't think that was either a nice thing to say about the brass band or his wife. We missed him. It'll be a lot of fun this week.
So I'm going to smoothly transition to say you also spent almost 30 years in the Cedar Rapids Municipal Band, right?
yes,
And you're still serving on the Cedar Rapids Concert Association board, is that true?
not anymore.
Oh, they kicked you off the board?
No, I just resigned from that.
Oh, she resigned.
I felt I aged out.
There are some things I could say, but I don't think you aged out of that part.
Well, the secret to my non-aging is right here. My nurse wife feeds me well and makes sure I get my 8 hours sleep. And she drives for me now. Yeah, my family was relieved when we came to that point.
All right, and on that note, are there questions? Yes?
I don't have a question, but Rob, I think it would be nice to see a show of hands. How many of Luman's former students are in the audience?
Did any of you bring your instruments?
Better question, are any of you still playing those instruments?
Yeah, how many of you are still playing? David called me out earlier for not playing because I sent my saxophone to Wichita with my kid. He's a saxophone performance major, playing the horn appropriately. But some of you are still playing. This is such an amazing tribute to an educator, right? To have, well, one, just to have you in the room, but secondly, that some of you are still playing. Are you still playing trombone?
No, I gave my trombone, a year ago, I gave my trombone to a repairman, and I said, when you run across some kid in junior high that would really like to play and doesn't have the money for a horn, give it to him.
So if you're not playing trombone, what are you playing?
Bass clarinet.
I think saxophone is slightly higher than bass clarinet on the make fun of instrument list. You played bass clarinet, and also you helped out the percussion section in the Muni band. Is that right?
Yeah, I played the bass drum in municipal band for a few years. Frank Pearsall came to me one time after rehearsal, and he said, some of the band members are really complaining. Whoever they'd had playing bass drum did not keep a steady beat. He said, how about you? Can you keep a steady beat? And I said, well, try me out, we'll see. And I thought, don't have to keep upper lip on that instrument. And, so then I played the bass drum for Frank Pearsall, and he was a good director. He's easy to follow. And,
I'll bet you and I were possibly briefly in that band together. I spent a summer in that band, and as I recall, we kept time.
Dave Law,
So-
Dave Law has a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I've got a short Luman story.
All right, I love that.
When I was young and foolish, I sent in a reel-to-reel tape for an Iowa Bandmasters performance and got accepted. And I turned that letter over to Cheryl, so it's in the archives, and it was signed by Luman. And years later, I asked him, I said, do you remember that band? And he said, yes, I do. A little 1A band in the middle of, he said, you were the only band that had French horns. And that was fine. I was happy that was just fine. And we played that summer, or we played that spring.
In general, do you want to be remembered for your French horns?
Well, my license plate says French horn.
Okay.
But I kept that letter for quite a while, and finally I thought I better get that to our IBA historian. So Cheryl has that, and Ken Smikle's signature's on there along with yours. Yeah.
Well, as an old trombone player, I used to have people say, oh, are you still letting things slide?
I feel really good that I didn't tell that joke. Okay. Other questions?
Do you want a story
Absolutely.
about him?
Well, I mean, that would probably be
I
best.
need to find out if he knows we can know that. I was at Roosevelt with him. I graduated with Steve, so we were in the same class. They lived in Cedar Hills. I lived 26th Street, between Cedar Hills and Roosevelt. We had to be there 7:30 in the morning for band practice. And I'd be walking down Johnson Avenue, and all of a sudden this car would slow, just slow, honk, honk, and then take off. It was him. Do you remember that? Yeah, you did it to me.
This has been a really strange edition of Oral
But you've always been my idol.
Aw, that's the sweetest.
I do remember once at a parent conference when I think I had the right answers for a change. This young fella came up to me, looking kind of angry about something, and he said, Mr. Colton, what did I do to get a D in band? I said, nothing. Okay, he says, I'll get on him.
All right, we always like to ask, as we come to the end of a program, we always like to ask what sort of advice you might give your younger self at the beginning of your music career, or that you might give to younger band directors like David Law about your career and your passions.
Well, something that you really enjoy, something that you feel you have a little ability in. See, when I was the age to start on an instrument, I'll tell you my beginning story. In the middle 30s, or early 30s, yeah, my dad lost his job. Dad was a good worker. He was a manager of a small grain elevator feed shop, which was kind of out in the country, north of Rockford. And when things were getting tight, the owner of that group decided, I've got to save a little money. I'm going to run the place myself. And so he let my dad go. It was nothing he'd done wrong, but the owner took over to save some money. And Then, it was about that age, 5th grade, that, yeah, I'm losing the train of thought again.
The band director, wherever you went to play an instrument.
See, that's what I have her for. I forgot what this story was leading up to.
Well, you were gonna talk about your first band director, I believe. and getting
Yeah,
involved with the
okay,
instrument.
now I know. Okay, so we had to move a couple times in that period, but my dad was out of work. And I remember the uncertainty, the shame that I felt when my first grade teacher went around the class and what does your father do for work? And I had to say, he's unemployed, you know, that was, but, so it was a little later than that, around 5th grade, that we finally moved. My grandfather lived in Genoa, Illinois, and he had first built a small house the family lived in, and then as he was able, he moved that across the street and built a bigger home that they lived in. Well, he had rented out the small home. It was a tenant home, and when my dad got out of work at that time, my grandpa said, you come and I'll let you live in the tenant house. And he very kindly told the people who were there, I'm sorry, I've got to have family here, so can you find another place to live? Because they were just paying rent. And so we lived in that house across from Grandpa for a while. And it's a funny thing, the town line, the border to Genoa, was just beyond my grandpa's house, but this house across the street was in the country. And so for the first time, we had to go to the country school, which was a mile down the way, where the town school was closer up this way. And,
Okay, get to the story about the band director. You wanted to join the band in 5th grade.
yeah, okay. That's what I have you for, thank you. Then we moved. After that, he got a job in Aurora, Illinois, which was a bigger town, and not as big as it is now, but managing a chicken hatchery. And I was in 5th grade then, and they had a band director at that school, that grade school. And his name was Paul Yoder. Now, to any band director here, they would know that name. I presume Paul Yoder was just out of college. That was his first job, teaching the grade school. And I said, oh boy, here's a band I've been wanting to play. So I got a friend to take me in to see Mr. Yoder. It was before school. He was in his office, sitting there writing music. This man wrote hundreds of band compositions, and, writing music. And meek little me, I was always undersized, and I was shy at that time. And so I went up and, Mr. Yoder, I'd like to take cornet lessons. He looked up from the piece he was writing, just looked at me. No, got too many cornets. And that was it. he didn't tell me he had a baritone sitting over there, or some other instrument, but that was 5th grade. I was a sophomore in high school before I went to a school where I could get to play a horn. Those were Depression days. We were moving, because I had moved to a county seat town, Denison, Iowa, a county seat. They didn't have a band anymore. They'd had to get rid of it because they couldn't afford it. And this was in the 30s, you know, and so they hired a local piano teacher who came once a week and had girls' chorus. That was all the music they had in that school. But anyway, as a sophomore in high school, Dad got another job back in this little town of Kirkland. And here's a town of 550. But the man who taught band there lived in Rockford. He played in a dance band on the weekend, and he taught 5 days a week in 4 different towns.
Huh.
One day in a town, and in the biggest town of the 4, he taught 2 days. And so I went into him, and his name was Roy Hubble. See, I still remember him. But, there I was a sophomore in high school, and I'd had some piano, and I said, well, he had had an aunt and an uncle of mine already, because he taught there a while. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, what would you like to play? I said, trombone, but I don't have an instrument. He said, could you pay $15 for one? And I said, no, I'll scrape that up. So the next week he came back, got one at the music store, $15 for a trombone, and it worked. And I started with him. And that was the beginning of my playing in the sophomore year. So I saw Mr. Roy Hubble in later years in a band convention, and I just gently mentioned to him, well, I've seen you before. I wanted to start, and you were too busy. And he said, oh.
No, that was you.
Yes, that would have been Mr. Yoder, right? Who
Yeah.
was too busy to get you started. But the gentleman, Mr. Humble? Is that-
Hubble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Roy Hubble. He and his brother had a dance band. They played on weekends, Saturday and sometimes Sunday afternoon. And that's how they made their living. And he got. I mean, my dad was on the school board, so he said they paid him $50 a day, and he had his own transportation, you know, to drive from Rockford to that town.
Wow, so he was a dedicated educator in the same way that you became.
Well, trying to make a living.
Well,
Yeah.
that's important too.
Yeah.
So Luman mentioned a moment ago that he always was undersized, but I think we can probably agree that his legacy in the musical world, particularly here in the state of Iowa, is oversized. And it has been, despite my warrior leanings, it has been my great pleasure to talk to the architect of the Band of Blue. Please join me in thanking you. Once again, thank Mike and Esther Willson for sponsoring this program. If you are not getting our weekly e-news, which is written with just sharp and brilliant copy by some fellow with a microphone in his hand, you really should be getting it, because then you'll know about all of the programs that are coming up. So please join us on our website, become a member of the History Center, and come back for the next edition of Oral Histories Live. Thanks very much.